to the bone to do it. They constrict everyone above
all right.
18 to do it.
And all right.
Did you get us done?
All right,
okay.
Skip, it's all on you.
All right, bro. Okay, so you deride me for you say that I call everybody that I don't like fascist, but I'm not the one who started calling somebody fascist. I I I brought those countries up as examples of more appropriate examples of fascism when you described
But
Israel
they're
as being
not.
fascist,
That's
and
the
you
thing.
still
They're
you're
not.
going no hey, let's stop that, okay, for now.
No,
But I
you
mean,
you did it. You did it to me, so I'm returning the favor.
okay,
Okay.
all right.
Now
Well,
here's the thing.
okay,
You wanted
Time
to
pause
step in
at
on my
2:45.
organized thoughts.
yeah,
I'm
you're
stepping in
pausing
on
my
your
time there.
organized thoughts.
Okay.
Now
Yeah,
here's the
as
deal.
soon as you guys go
You've
back and
listed
forth, I
states.
pause your time.
Listen, just shoot your mouth off for another 3 minutes and then shut the fuck up so I can talk, okay? Because I do have some organized thoughts. So just go ahead and talk for another 3 minutes, and I'll let you do that and spew your shit, and then let me
The
have my
sheer
organized thought.
amount of disrespect you've shown me this entire time
Dude,
is
respect is earned, and I listened to you. I listened to your bullshit, and I was sitting there just fucking going, "This guy is spewing bullshit, and nobody is effectively countering him. He's just walking all over everybody."
and you're not
Okay, and I'm
effectively
not going to
countering
let
me,
you
dude.
do that
You're
to me.
talking out. You're
Yes, I
talking
am.
out.
Yes, I am.
No, you're
No, I
doing the
am not
same
talking to
thing.
my.
You're doing the same thing
You
anybody
think
who thinks they
Mussolini
are right
defined
does.
fascism? Mussolini was describing ideas that were given to him by other people, and you don't even fucking know that. You bring up one guy's
The
name.
essay
No,
on
dude,
fascism. I'm saying I went back as
fascism,
close to the source
the
as
whole
possible.
concept. No, that is not even like he's 20 years after the fucking source of fascism. The
No,
people
he
who
was
actually
because
brought up
he
those
was a
concepts.
syndicalist. He was a syndicalist 20 years before, and
Yes,
fascism hadn't even been
yes,
formed yet.
yeah.
I'm
And when
sorry,
the
you cannot
people
call
actually,
syndicalism
the
fascism.
people, the people who were developing the concepts that he employed, okay, were doing that while he was still fucking around with junior level concepts. Okay.
And
So, and you don't even know that. You don't even know that there were a group of people who actually spawned those concepts that he was basically an understudy. You don't even know that. You think he
yes,
defined them.
yes, I did.
And then you want to
The
claim,
sheer level of disrespect you're showing me. You want to assume I don't know a thing because you just want to
well, you
bark.
talk like
You
you
want to
don't
bark.
know a thing. You
I
talk like you
said
don't
I
know a
was
thing.
using Mussolini's
No,
definition. I asked
you
which
know,
definition you.
let's go
The
to
exact wording
China. Let's
was.
go to China. You
And
insisted that
all
they're
righty then.
Maoists. You can't
All
even
right,
own
guys.
property in
Can I
China
jump in here?
under Maoism. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, man. It's your channel.
All right. No, I was sorry. I'm not gonna lie. I was having a bit of fun with your conversation, but the chat asked me to moderate, but I'm not even gonna lie. I kind of like the back and forth between you guys, but I do need to give Skip. I do need to get your 3-minute rebuttal. Yes, dude. Well, you just go ahead and mute yourself because I already know what he's gonna say. It's probably gonna take you off. So we're just gonna go ahead and moderate. Go back to the 3 minutes. Go ahead and start it off. Go ahead and start it off, Skip.
Okay, fascism included syndicalism. They changed it to they changed the word to corporate, but uh, they changed it to corporations, but it was the same freaking concept. Okay, and it just basically what it did was broaden it so that so that the management was actually had their syndicate involved as well. Um, Maoism does not permit private ownership. Okay, so you insist that China is Maoist. They're not Maoist. You can't create billionaires under a Maoist system. You can't do it. Okay, so a system that blends government and business so that they're basically government can control the economy, and it's now the difference. You could argue that they're not fascist because fascist is national socialism. Okay, it's a nationalist thing. And while the Chinese are extremely nationalist and they're very racist, which would also fit the profile, they do profess that they would they still have the dream of spreading communist around the world. But they're not a Maoist system. And insisting that they are, you say that I disrespect you, but bro, you say stupid things like China is Maoist. And I can't, no, you can't, no, but even if you could argue that they're not, if you want to argue that they're not fascist, you cannot possibly argue that they're Maoist. You can't argue that they're Leninist. You can't argue that they're really Marxist because Marxism abhors a billionaire. And they've literally created a system where they've created like dozens, if not hundreds, of billionaires. So that just doesn't. So when you say something that's that far out there, then yeah, I lose respect and I start to treat you accordingly. And yeah, maybe some of that is from 31 years of serving in uniform, but they didn't pay me to assuage people's feelings. They paid me to call bullshit when I saw it. And I see bullshit. Okay. I see a lot of weakness here and a lot of made up crap. And I see what I'm starting to think is some anti Semitism because of all of the very mystical things that you latch onto about Israel that really, dude, I mean, come on, man. You're ascribing powers and things that I don't know, man. It seems like you got
30 seconds.
there's something a little bit more there than an honest political evaluation. Okay, so declaring I did not bring up the fascism though. You brought it up by declaring Israel a fascist state, which is absolutely ridiculous because they just don't fit the profile. Government doesn't control private business in Israel, although they do have some state-owned businesses. But then again, so do we, having to do with certain. Well, we did anyway. Like for instance, Springfield Armory at one point was actually a government-owned armory that made weapons. So
time.
Okay, I'll shut up.
All right,
All
yes,
about
dude.
the rules.
Hey man, appreciate you, Skip. And
all right.
Hey, shout out to Skip and Guessy. You guys been pretty good. You guys been pretty good. Well, participants. Honestly, the whole night. Even though you guys had y'all back and forth, you guys been pretty good.
Yeah,
right, go ahead. Guessy.
I'm trying. I mean, like I said, at least it's not Dave. We can actually have a civil debate, which is fun, even though it's getting a little heated here and there. But okay,
it's a spicy civil debate.
Yeah, it's got that tingle to it. But okay, so here's the thing. I'm thoroughly aware that under Maoism you can't have private property, but I'm also thoroughly aware that underneath Stalinism you couldn't have private property. At any given time, the state can step in and go, yeah, those billions of dollars you helped accrue, that was just for the party. We're taking it. That still applies Maoist systems of governance over the entire structure. And like I stated, Maoism is a Confucianist, legalist blending of Stalinist Leninism. It's always going to have these weird little intricacies that allow them to meld and mesh and change as necessary, predominantly to benefit the Han Chinese, and then subsequently go out through the rings of the population. But without going too in depth with the dynamics of Chinese racial mysticism that they have embedded for the last 3,000 years. Yes, they're still a Maoist state, but they have intricacies that are built into it and other tensions that are arising within their system that are bringing it down, because they're the longest running communist nation. And as far as we could tell, communist nations don't make it past 100 years. So they're probably at the tail end of their ability to sustain themselves. Back to Israel. You hit me with the anti-Semitism claim. I'm going to refute that. Full stop. I studied underneath multiple rabbis during the time of getting my religion minor. I learned from them the things that I'm talking about with regards to all of these dynamics of the mysticism that's involved, the stuff that's in the Talmud, the stuff that's in the Kabbalah, that underpins a lot of Zionist teaching. And Zionism was not originally a Jewish idea. It was originally a Christian idea that Jewish nationalists picked up. Okay. And when you talk about fascism being a national socialism, by all rights, Israel is a socialist state. They have universal health care. They have a universal education system. They have all the metrics of a socialist system. They just haven't implemented full-scale integration of state and corporate yet. But they are getting closer, and they do it on a regular basis. And it goes back to the original requirements of a fascist state. that Israel meets with all the stuff I've already stated with regards to what a fascist state is. Israel meets that, and me stating that does not mean I'm anti-Semitic. It just means Israel is stepping down a dark path and has been for the better part of 20 years now.
And time. And all right, Skip, it's on you.
Okay. Well, having social services that exceed what we would consider, for instance, to be the realm of government. We've got countries in Europe like uh, the Netherlands, that have very similar systems, but could not in any way be argued to be fascist. And nor could I don't believe that Israel can either. They have regular elections. They're not a cult of personality. And while they're not, and actually they don't fit the ethnic thing because they have Arab residents who are citizens of Israel who are Muslim. Okay, so even though they're the Jewish state, they have citizens that are not Jewish, and they don't penalize them for that. And by the logic of, well, they created a state for a certain religion. Pakistan was created for a specific religion, and they actually do oppress their non-Muslim minorities. But nobody's arguing that Pakistan is fascist. Maybe a badly run parliamentary democracy that hasn't got civilian control of their military, but they haven't been accused of being fascist. So no, I absolutely don't buy it. Okay, so whether or not you're anti-Semitic, that's between you and your creator, really at a deeper level. But whether you are or not, you still don't. You're not getting the point. You don't understand how to recognize a fascist state when you see one. Fascism is a collectivist ideology, and it was developed by Marxists, and it's an outgrowth of Marxism. And the fact that it's typically portrayed as being on the right side of the political spectrum is probably one of the biggest academic crimes of the century, because it's a collectivist ideology. The right side of the political spectrum tends to be more individualistic, to the point where on the far right, you get anarchists, but they're libertarian anarchists. They're not anarcho-communists. But
45 seconds.
Collectivism, that kind of collectivism that you find in communism and in National Socialism, Nazism, or fascism, that puts it like, why would Nazism or National Socialism be on the right side of the political spectrum when it's a collectivist ideology? So it doesn't make any sense that it's over there. And when we actually see that, like, the people who became the first fascists were Marxists before that, and what we see that China has wandered into fascism when they started out as Maoists. It shows that fascism is actually more similar to communism than it is to a parliamentary democracy. So, yeah, your definition of fascism is it's very twisted, and not being able to recognize a fascist kind of like Spain. You're sitting here arguing that Spain isn't, but the Generalissimo himself said it was fascist right up until his dying day, and yet you argue with him and tell him that he wasn't a fascist. You tell me that he claimed to be a fascist because he wanted for his allies, but then after his allies were defeated, he still insisted that he was a fascist for another 40 years until he passed away.
In time. All right, guest dude, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I've got a couple. First, it's interesting that you will listen to one guy saying he's a fascist up till the dying breath, even though ideologically he very much showed all the signs of being a Carlylist, royalist, loyalist, that was essentially establishing a new kind of monarchy in all but name alone. But then you look at Maoists who call themselves Maoists, but you don't take them at their word. So I find that disconnect in logic strange. Again, going back to fascism. Fascism is not something that you can just lambast outward to anything. It has to meet certain criteria. The most pivotal of all that criteria is the state being a mystical thing above all else, being something that overrides individualism. And the fact that you're breaking out basic level political compass argumentations of the left is collectivist, the right is individualistic, and all of that, it's showing a very rudimentary understanding of political theory and science, when in reality the fascists and the Nazis were part of a different branch. You had fraternalism, you had socialism, you had libertalism that formed up out of the French Revolution and spread across all of Europe like wildfire. And these gave birth to socialism and fascism and republicanism and all the different isms that came out of the age of revolutions. It was all an answer to, what do we do when we take down a king? How do we restructure ourselves? What do we become? What is our name in sake? Because a lot of it stems from the king was a spiritual entity that was embedded with power by God to rule. And a lot of it came down to, how do we replace that as a human civilization that is becoming more secular? And fascism answered that by, well, instead of the king being the mystical entity handed down by God, the state itself is now the mystical entity handed down by God. So Israel having elections means nothing. And not having a cult of personality, nowhere in fascist doctrine is a cult of personality a necessity. Nowhere is a barring of elections a necessity. Elections can be held in a fascist state. You don't need a cult of personality for a fascist state to exist. The state itself supplants and rises above all that. It replaces the position of the king. It was a progressive ideology that replaced monarchy and took from ideas of communism and syndicalism and republicanism and brought those together. It states firmly in some of Mussolini's writings and other fascists of the time, we are a progressive movement that is bringing it into the age of the monarchy, the republic, and the liberal enlightenment. This is the step forward for humanity, for
And all right
mankind.
time.
Well, one more point. You brought up the Nordic states. Those are democratic socialist states, so their systems are socialist, which doubles down on my statement that yes, there is socialism in Israel.
Okay. Skip, you want to attack that?
Absolutely. No, socialism is not providing a bunch of social services. Socialism is when the government runs the economy. Okay, so I mean, really, it's when the government controls the economy.
I gotta
like
pause you on that.
literally.
As
Well,
a socialist, no. It's not always when the government runs. It's about control over productions of means and control over structures of production, which means
okay, listen,
it
man. I
allows.
respected your 3 minutes.
I know.
The
I
last
want to point that.
the
I just want
last
to
two
point.
times, I literally muted my own microphone and I shut the fuck up. Okay, so I gave you that. I gave you that respect, and I would really ask that you save your comments. And I sat here and took notes so that I knew what I wanted to address. Okay, so that's what I'm going to ask you to do, if you would, please.
And all right, I'll go ahead and rewind to 15 seconds for you. And go ahead.
Okay, so yes, I am asserting that socialism and socialism in its absolute form is basically the government, or they would say the people own the means of production. Okay, so socialism and communism, they're essentially like they're fruit of the same tree, and some people argue that they're the same thing. Okay, but if you're a socialist, then yeah, whatever. Anyway, but yeah, socialism, yeah, in under real socialism. So, when you've got a country that provides a lot of, taxes the shit out of their people and provides a lot of services that we believe are more efficiently provided by private enterprise, or those of us that aren't socialists believe that it's more efficiently provided by private enterprise. That doesn't necessarily make them socialist, although they are leaning towards that because they have nationalized certain industries then, because in order to provide medical care, then you have a national medical service. So you've nationalized. So the government does control that portion of the economy, which is what you then say that they're democratic socialists. Okay, so okay, I can see where they've got a partial socialism, but yes, if a country is actually socialist, then the government is directing the economy. They are telling who what to produce and how much of it, and they're setting the prices and they're determining the wages and so forth. Okay, so that's how that is what a real socialist country is supposed to look like. So you can call yourself whatever you want. Now, as far as the guy from Spain, and I believe him that he's a fascist, yeah, absolutely fucking believe him, because he had nothing to gain by saying that he was. Okay, the Chinese, they're supposed to be communist, and the communist brand is anti-fascist. Okay, so yeah, they actually have a lot to lose by saying, you know what, we're not really communist anymore. Although when they do claim that they're not really communist, or they're a little something else, it's that they're a little capitalist, they're a little free market. And really, when you look at it, in a lot of ways, fascism is trying to blend, trying to cram together the collectivist thing with private enterprise, where they said nominally Willie Messerschmitt owned his plant, but the German government locked him the fuck out because he was arguing with the armaments minister. He had a difference of opinion. So the party said, you can't go in your own factory. And so for the last 3 years of the war, he didn't get to go into his factory. So yeah, that was, but nominally he owned the business. You have people who supposedly own businesses in China. That is not Maoist. Okay. But yet the government tells them what to do when they want to. And that is fascist behavior, not communist behavior, because the communists just outright own the shit and nobody owns anything of their own. So you come up with these bizarre arguments, and then you want to tell me that I'm being rudimentary. Yeah, I'm kind of breaking things down for you a little Barney style, but come on, man. That's, you can't claim sophistication when you can't figure out why the Chinese would not say that they're fascists, why they're going to insist that they're Maoists. Go ahead.
Right.
Socialism is just diet communism.
Okay,
And
so
all right,
It is. It's fruit of the same tree. Marx talked about it.
Here's the thing. Looking at the Maoists, predominantly, I've already stated, Maoism is an inherently Chinese ideology. It molds and shapes itself around Chinese rules. So to understand it, you have to understand the full dynamics of Chinese systems. So it's a subject that would take up another 3 hours easy for us to be able to dive the full depth of, to understand the Han dynamic, the rings of heaven outside of the Han system, understanding why Beijing is the capital for the reasons it's the capital, understanding the history of the heavenly kingdom that led to the Hans restructuring themselves as such a hard-lined group that were willing to let Mao do the things he did to establish a nationalistic state under Maoism. Maoism is not communism. It is an entirely Chinese manufactured system, just like North Korea's flavor of quote unquote communism isn't communism. It's a flavor born straight out of the Kim family's internal machinations. They don't operate underneath the same rules. Back to socialism in general. Okay, you have layers of socialism, you have layers of socialist thought, layers of socialist school. But going to the idea of the state owning and operating, or a nation owning and operating, all of that evolved out of Republican thought. If the government is of the people and by the people, then the people should have the means to go, hey, government, we want X, Y, and Z. And the government should go, well, yeah, technically you should be able to, and you voted on it, and our representatives are doing it, and they establish this system. This was the argumentation for early socialists going back to pre-Marx, because Marx wasn't the first. You had all kinds of socialist thought prior to Marx, Ricardian, Smithian theorists that were debating how do you take the republic into a more socialized system. The Nordic model is the prime example of a government-run system. They do regulate huge chunks of their economy. They do
45
have
seconds.
a planned economy. They do have all these systems in place that are structured in a socialist way, but it's at a state level. There are socialist schools that argue for a decentralized, no state model where it's individualistic and enterprise based. But there are different layers to how you function within a socialist thinking. Going back to Israel, they have a socialist system and they are a nationalist nation, and they are very much leaning towards being fascistic and being a fascist state because of all the requirements necessary being met.
And all right, now let me go ahead and read out some of these super chats real quick because I'm pretty behind. I'm not even gonna lie. All right, guys. So shout out to my man Monty. What's good, Monty? He says I gotta put a super chat in to say something, which is a pretty good point. And shout out my man Vladstein. All right, so G2 Planet is the one that is actually hiding people on the channel for talking. I've only timed out people. Big difference of you would call a ban. I mean, you know what? I'll address that later. And shout out Hellbat. He says, before you leave, I sent the short in the Discord. I see it right here. And DD Gaming, he says, Skip is correct. The means of fascism, socialism, and other parties lies on paper to look good. Look to the 0 to 60 time on Acura, an Acura stock. Acura Honda stock. Yeah, now, all right. Now, I believe that was guest due, so I think it's on Skip, right?
Yep, it's my turn. Okay. All right. So, first of all, Mao was a Marxist. He didn't make that shit up. The difference between Maoism and Leninism is they had differences of opinion, and one of the most significant ones was who to include in the proletariat. And we see these struggles in countries that call themselves communist. At the beginning of the Soviet Union, they argued about who to include in the proletariat, and which is one of the reasons why Ukraine has such complaints about what happened there, because they decided that small landowning farmers were not part of the proletariat, and so they seized their property. And then they had they created the collective farms and had a big famine because they did that. So in China, Maoism, yeah, it's a little different from Leninism. He had some differences of opinion with Lenin, but he was very much based on Marx. So no, they didn't create that themselves. North Korea, on the other hand, is Stalinist because essentially, basically, the people that taught them how to be communists were the Russians under Stalin, and they pretty much latched onto the Stalinism, and they've maintained it ever since, because it's passed down generation to generation. And yes, the cult of personality it is a consistent feature of fascist countries. So when you see somebody like Putin, and then you see that he's able to walk into a privately owned company and read them the riot act and tell them how the cow ate the cabbage, then yeah, okay. So, and the fact that he's been the leader of the Soviet or the Russian Federation now for I don't know how many decades, and he keeps finding ways to stay in power. They literally changed their constitution. Yeah. Do they have free and open elections? Yeah, probably not. So Israel does have open elections, and at least you've gone to, well, they're leaning fascistic, which if we've gotten you to that point, then we can let that subject go. I mean, we can argue about China all we want, but I think most people can see that, yeah, they started out as a communist country, that basically reappropriated all the property and dealt with it as a communist country. And in the meantime, they have now opened up. which we thought that was going to liberalize them, and we thought that the Peking uprising in the 90s was a happy sign that they were moving towards a more populist, more democratic system. And Xi basically reversed all of that. But he kept the capitalist trappings in order to draw a better response from the commercialized world. So the capitalist world to appear more business friendly. But in the meantime, this weird blend of communist and private property is pretty much what fascism looks like. And the fact that Xi is that cult leader now, yeah, that fits a lot of fascism. The only other thing I'd say is that the Enlightenment began hundreds of years before the revolutions, and I am a child of the Enlightenment. The socialism stuff it's utopianist bullshit. It's never going to work because it literally defies human nature. But maybe someday you'll come along with it.
And it can't
With
exist
that, I'll pass.
without capitalism.
Now, hold on. Now, guys, guess dude is low-key a socialist. So if you guys are going to go in on socialist, he's going to fight to the death on it.
Yeah, because
I'll
first
take
off,
that fight every day. I'll take that fight every
I
day.
will
First,
absolutely fight
let me
over
start.
socialism.
Let me start with if I said leaning fascist, that was a misstep in words. I mean very firmly Israel is a fascist state. That's fact. Like the evidence is there. They meet all the criteria. You don't need a cult. You don't need a cult of personality, and you can have elections to have a fascist state. Nothing in fascist theory stated otherwise. As long as you have the criteria of the state above all else and being the state as a mystical entity, because its entire purpose was to replace the idea of the republic and replace the idea of the divergent nation state and to replace the idea of the monarchy. So that was the entire intent behind it. And as someone who was a syndicalist and spent a good time as a syndicalist, I understand how syndicalism does have its flaws and leaves much to be desired and would have led many syndicalists to becoming fascist, because syndicalism is purely secular. And with a purely secular system, you don't have enough tradition to build on for a society to remain functional, and you need that mystical element in a society for it to be functional, a pseudo myth, something that allows the society to stay stable. Which brings me to socialism. Not all socialism is utopian. A lot of it does try to argue for utopian ends, which is batshit insane. And you'll see many debates between different schools of socialist thought that are centered on the problem of the utopia. A lot of socialists will down and out argue against the idea that socialism leads to utopia. And I'm one of those, because it's not a matter of trying to reach a utopia. It's a matter of trying to figure out a better economic model that allows for the throughput of industry to function in such a way that you don't reach these thermodynamic bottlenecks that we're dealing with in a traditional raw free market system that creates oligarchic power, that creates mega corporations, that leads to a new medievalism. The socialist schools that I've frequented and have written papers on and have written huge essays on and have argued to death about is a type of socialism that argues for a decentralization mechanism that is anti-utopian, with the sheer purpose of trying to hold on to the current state of industrialization as long as we can, for the sake of reaching past the trials and tribulations of the first stage of the new medieval period.
All right. Now, does anybody want to attack that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got it.
All right, Skip, you want to go ahead?
Oh,
Yeah, but you know what? Who was that who spoke up
Monty.
and said absolutely? I'll wait for money. I'll take my 3 minutes after him.
All right, Monty, go at
So,
it.
so everything about socialism fails without capitalism, because simply for the fact that there is scarcity in the world, and scarcity, you have to, you don't just get to take other people's shit and have anybody have any sort of work for, or drive to work for anything else. So it falls on its face as soon as anybody can get any power to overthrow it. So I
See, that if I may, that's the issue is there are schools of socialist thought that have taken that into account and understand it's not that capitalism is necessary, it's that a free market is necessary because there is scarcity. And because
Monty was
scarcity,
paused at 220.
because
oh no, I can, if I won't try to overtalk him. If he wants to interject, he
oh,
can
I
interject.
yeah, I mean, I see what your point is, and I understand. Like, yes, a vast majority of the schools of socialism do very much argue for being anti-capitalist, arguing
Mhm.
against capitalism, etc. But there are
Yeah.
socialist schools that argue that it's not so much an anti-capitalist argument; it's that capitalism and socialism are both inherently flawed systems that are competing for shared access to the free market. And what really exists is the free market. And until we can devise a third option that we can
Mhm.
get attachment to the free market, we need socialism to better balance the equations so that we have better throughput in the industry. And until we have that better throughput in all these industries, so we don't have these dynamics of the Pareto distribution and all these other factors screwing up the equation, so we don't keep running into the problem of why do we have a billionaire with $700 billion while we have people in the streets who are dying of starvation? Why do we have simultaneous problems of, or in the United States, we have a simultaneous epidemic of hunger, malnutrition, and obesity occurring at the same time?
If I may. So again, when you deal with scarcity, you have to sort who gets what in some way. You can argue that it'd be merit based, and that's capitalism, or you can argue that it's you know based off of quote unquote what's fair, or what someone arbitrarily determines to be fair, and that would be socialism. The issue that I have is that there is scarcity in this world. We don't just get to have whatever the fuck we want, and we can't just create whatever the fuck we want. In a world where everything's run by robots, and we can go mine other planets and farm on other planets, and there is no scarcity, I would 100% be for socialism. Everybody just gets whatever they want, and they work if they want to, because there is no need for forced labor, because there's no need for labor, because it's handled. Um, until we get to that, I think it's actually the opposite. You can't force throughput, because you can't motivate. You cannot force motivation. It has to be. It's a naturally occurring thing. Like you can't take a dude and put him through boot camp and expect him to be motivated if he's a draftee, if he doesn't agree with the message. So instead of, because I mean, we've gone for a while arguing different theologies, or not theologies, ideologies, and it's getting us nowhere closer to anything. I would say we live in a world, and our country's run on one thing. We are living
30 seconds.
amongst other countries that run on other things. So to argue it to death is not we're not going to solve anything with that.
All right. Now, Skip, do you want to take that argument on? Skip, you still with us?
Oh yeah, I had my mic muted. Sorry.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be respectful, and if I make an exclamation of disgust or whatever, it doesn't need to stop the conversation. Um, So basically, I do want to say this is that the only way that you can claim that Israel is a fascist state is to warp reality to the point that it has to be driven by something, which is it's either financial, like some kind of gain, which it obviously isn't the case, or some kind of a powerful emotional root to this that literally drives you to an evaluation that like literally nobody comes to. And I'm saying that you've got an emotional stake in that. And that I find like since it seems to be negative, I don't know why do you have such powerful negative emotions towards Israel? And why is that the root of an argument at all? Which is the point that the other gentleman just made. Is like we're arguing about like what their fucking ideology is. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is the root of this discussion is about Iran and whether the action taken to prevent them from acquiring a nuclear weapon was necessary. And we can argue about that. This is not the beginning of World War III. Okay. I mean, I've seen a lot of shit happen. People say, well, this is an act of war. It's, you know, it's a, hey, listen, Reagan put half of the Iranian Navy on the bottom. And that wasn't the start of, you know, that didn't start a war. Carter burned 3 aircraft down to the sand in Desert One, literally invaded Iran. That didn't result in a, you know, like a us declaring war or having a declared war go on. I mean, Reagan bombed Gaddafi's tent for fuck's sake. And it didn't, you know, they actually, Gaddafi chilled out. He was like, okay, all right. Gaddafi got the message. He was a little bit more rational. This dude, who like literally you start removing his capacity and he just makes more threats. That's not a rational actor, bro. You cannot allow this clown who has, like I said, as soon as he got his hands on a ballistic missile, he fucking launched them, even at somebody. Even North Korea doesn't do that. They are not rational actors. You cannot allow that entity to possess, like when what I'm talking about is the Islamic Republic of Iran, not the people of Iran. Okay, because most of the people of Iran do not abide by what's they're being literally dominated. So hopefully this gives them a window. Maybe they rise up and they change their government. That should be up to them. I don't believe if you break we've tried that. If you break it, you bought it. Nuh-uh. We can break it. Let them put it back together. They can do it. They're smart people.
All right. Well said, my man. And now anybody else want to, now I guess did you have any disagreements?
Yeah.
All right.
It's not from a deep emotional place. It's an assessment. It's what I do. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna interrupt this time. No, nobody. You are literally like, other than like people who are obviously being hyperbolic, like somebody who's waving a Palestinian flag. Yeah, that's not. I mean, that's not a serious. He says Israel is a fascist state. That doesn't mean anything to me. This guy is obviously emotionally invested. Okay, and everybody drops the F word. You were the guy who dropped it tonight, and then you accused me of dropping it on everybody I didn't like. But you were the one who named the people you don't like fascists. Okay, and you can't. That's not supportable. It's nobody, no serious academic has ever evaluated Israel as being a fascist state. And so for you to do that means that you are driven by emotion.
And roll together. I'm loving it. I'm really loving it.
No, I'm saying, dude, you're so far out in left field, it has to be emotional.
You're using logical fallacies left and right and attacking me personally left and right. I'm really digging this, you know, like it's fun. It's fun.
Dig it all you want, bro. But come on, man. Like nobody else is saying this. Nobody serious is saying they're a fascist country. You're the only one.
Populum, like you're another logical fallacy just because I'm going against the grain and coming up with a novel idea, a novel assessment. I'm somehow wrong because it's not the popular academic.
I'm suggesting that your evaluation, your logic is affected by your emotions, and you have strong emotions about Israel.
No, because my entire reasoning behind it is I'm assessing it as it is. I'm assessing it based off of my understanding of
No.
fascism and assigning it to the
No,
nations that I
no,
see it as.
let's put it this way. It is so ridiculous. It is such a ridiculous assertion on its face that
Except
yes, it's so absolutely fucking
as someone who is
imponderably ridiculous
as
that
someone who is an
that
anarchist and a
I have
socialist.
no
No,
other option than to assume that you are like it is emotionally driven because
no, it's entirely.
there's no backing for that. I mean,
Except
it's
I've
on
given
its face,
the
it's ridiculous.
logical consistency
And it
and
doesn't make any
argumentation
fucking
for it.
sense, bro. When you say it, it sounds like a bunch of bullshit that you pulled out of your ass. Seriously, you're
Hold on, one.
justifying a thought that has no merit, but you're pulling
Except
out
I
these
can back it up.
justifications.
I can go
No, you
step by
can't.
step and argue
No,
it
you
and
can't.
back it up.
And when
And I
you can
have.
say it, you can call it ad populum, but I'm just saying, look, bro, when you're the only one in the
And
room
you're arguing
and you're spewing shit that people are
you're the
saying,
one
you
who's
sound like
now
you're full of shit.
using you're trying to discredit me on a personal level,
No.
claiming
Well,
I'm arguing from an
I've
emotional
asked you
position.
politely, hey man, this is what it looks like. No, because it is just that fucking ridiculous. It's that stupid of an argument to make that there has to be something that's
So
causing
you
you
showed up
to
thinking you were going to win,
think
and
that
you
way.
dissolved down into now attacking me on a personal level.
No,
Cool.
no,
I'm digging that.
no. You're actually trying to pretend like it's an actual logical argument, and it's not.
No, it is a logical argument. I've given
No, it's not.
my assessment of it. You could
Well, then
debate the
your
logic
hold
assessment
on
on,
a
is
hold on,
point
hold
by
badly
on,
point,
affected
hold
by
on,
but you're
something
not.
that's not
hold on,
tangible.
Because what you
Pandora.
did,
hold on,
no,
hold on.
what you did was hit me with a bunch of whataboutisms that I willingly fed into because cool, fun, debate fun, a bunch of ad hominems,
Not whataboutisms
a
at all.
bunch of
I'm saying
appeals
if you
to,
want an
yes,
example,
you
this
were
is
like,
what fascism
what
really
about
looks
this
like, and
country?
you're
What about
ascribing
this
it to
country?
this.
What about this country? What about this country? That's pure whataboutism. Your entire
No, I
debate
didn't say what
method
about what.
is flawed.
Nothing.
You didn't say it literally, but you pointed to other
No,
countries to try to divert
whataboutism
attention
what would
away.
be
That's what
if
you
I
said.
said, well, China did this, so when Israel does
No,
this,
not
it's
when you're
not so
talking
bad.
about
That's
comparing.
whataboutism.
Not when you're comparing the
I'm talking about comparing
socio-political
governments.
Hold
I'm talking about
ideology of
comparing
governments.
governments. Yeah, I'm
Yes,
talking about
and you're
the
using
way they actually run
whataboutisms.
their countries.
Putin
No,
does
I'm
this stuff
comparing.
over here. The Kims do this stuff over here. Xi does this stuff over here. But Israel,
Bro, they
oh,
have
they don't have
entire
any of
courses
that.
in
They can't be
universities
fascist.
called comparative government. Okay, so that's yeah, it's
Another
when
appeal to
you're
authority. Do you have anything else in your
you
arsenal?
called Israel fascist, and I'm saying,
Yes,
well, if you
and
want,
I'm
no, fascist
sticking to
looks like
my guns on
this.
it because
Yes, which
one
it's
of the key
so
aspects of
blatantly
somebody who is,
ridiculous.
as somebody who
No,
is
you're
a,
no, dude. It's so blatantly ridiculous that it's like it has to be driven by something else. It can't be based on logic because it's
no,
not logical.
it has
It doesn't
everything to
make
do with the
sense.
fact I got tired of hearing
I,
people say the word fascist to everything for the better part of the last 12
so then
years
you decided to
that
turn
I
it on
assessed
Israel?
it. No, that I assessed what fascism was. I studied it in depth,
You had
understood what
no,
it
you
is,
didn't. No,
understood
you don't.
why.
No, you don't.
So,
I'm here to tell you,
So you're
bro.
going back to
You
the
can't
ad
take that shit
hominems.
to any. You can't take that shit to any university and not get laughed out of the classroom. I'm serious.
I've taken it to universities and
Nobody
not
would
been
take you
laughed out of
seriously.
classrooms. So thank you very much.
I
I've
bet
written
you
papers
have.
on this and gotten
I'm,
high marks and had good debates with professors on the subject.
is that right? Because I swear to
I've
God, man,
argued
I
this.
have never heard anybody who like made any sense call Israel a fascist country. I've never heard that before.
he's
You're
drinking
like,
the
and
Iranian
for
Kool-Aid.
you to argue it is
And
just like it's so obviously like
Except
wrong
I've
that I'm
given
now, all
like,
right,
the
now,
exact
and
guys,
then you
now, guys.
claim that
structured
Let's not
requirements
leave.
of
Hold on,
the
guys,
academic.
government.
guys. Time out, guys. Now, let's not leave it to our personal opinions, man. We do have an audience that honestly, I'm gonna be real with you. The audience do agree with both. Well, not both, but there's a split agreement. People do agree with Guest Dude, and people do agree with Skip. Let's try to respect both opinions because apparently there is people who think Israel's fascist. Now, I mean, I don't share that opinion, but there are people in the chat. So, like I said, let's debate the ideas and let's leave it up for the audience to digest it. Now,
So can I say something real quick though?
go ahead.
Because we're arguing on a premise based off of somebody's assessment of something
And
no, the original point, if I may, because I got stepped on by Skip, the point that I was going to make, my original assessment of this was very simple. Okay. His argumentation on it was we're arguing in circles around ideology, except my entire premise was we're getting pulled into a war by an ally who is fascist by my assessment, and that is a problem.
Right, but so this entire night you have been asserting, not saying that this is my opinion, you're saying, oh, they're a fascist state. Why are we getting in bed with a fascist state?
Yes, that's my thesis statement.
You're not the authority on what fascism is. I'm sorry, you're not.
I didn't claim to be an authority. I claim to have a thesis statement on this. That nowhere do I claim to be an authority. I have
You've claimed to be an authority on it for fucking 4 hours now. Yes,
no,
you have.
I've argued my position for 4 hours. There's a difference.
So your position is what it is, right? Because that's and there's
position is what it is, and I'm arguing the position in good faith, and I'm being challenged on a personal level. It's got to be emotional, or I'm anti-Semitic, or I'm just dumb. These are the things that were leveled against me by Skip.
You ran over me before Skip got in here. You ran over me, hijacked the conversation, and talked and talked and talked and talked and talked. You did the same thing while we were in the back room, and you don't let anybody talk. You think if you talk faster and you talk more, you're somehow right. And if you say fancy words because you have a degree from someplace, that somehow we're all idiots and can't look for ourselves and see that Iran is developing a nuclear weapon and is threatening to kill all of us.
First, I've never argued that anyone was an idiot, and I didn't. I've stated, yes, I stated firmly, I understand the fears. I think the fears are unfounded. So if my debate method is a little bit steamrolly, my debate method is what it is, and I've been steamrolled in this as well. It was a back and forth mutual steamrolling, but at least my steamrolling doesn't come with a bunch of...
I muted my microphone. I muted my microphone time after time.
There's an audience, dude. You can't lie to an audience.
Hey, bro, you know what? That's fine. I have interrupted you. But I got after. I'll tell you what. When you double down, never mind. I'm just going to say I did mute myself several times, and I don't believe that
times.
Okay, I think that you've interrupted a lot more, and so for you to talk about, you've been steamrolled. No, bro, I've listened before, and he's right. You bullied the shit out of him, and that's one of the reasons why I said let me have at this guy, okay? Because you wind up. Okay, so you bring up fascism, and you call Israel fascist, okay? And then I say no, and then I say there's examples comparatively, this country or this country you could actually call those fascist, but Israel does not meet any of those criteria, okay? And
what was my response?
The next thing, hold on a second. The next thing I know, I'm being told that I call everybody I don't like fascist. So you turned it around and you became the victim, even though you're the one. Shush. No, you did this right away.
The shush thing. I'm not your fucking kid.
No. Let me talk because I'm making a point and you're interrupting my point. My point is, you brought up fascism and then you wound up being the victim because I called all my, anybody I don't like fascist. You brought up fascism. You labeled Israel fascist. I said they're not and gave other examples. Next thing I know, you turned it around. Hold on a second. Just a second ago, after you steamrolled that poor guy for all that time, and then you stepped all over me, and I said, yeah, you did it to me too. But somehow or other, you became the victim. I got steamrolled too. No.
I said you steamrolled.
In the weight of the whole thing. No. You know what?
Put words in my mouth and take the words.
Here you go. And you became the poor boy with all the ad populum. You're not arguing properly. You're gaslighting.
Oh, see, now you're using
You're
other
a
terms. Like,
gaslighter.
dude, I don't buy your shit.
That's exactly what
Like,
you're
You do.
doing.
You're gaslighting me.
And hold
You
on, guys.
gaslit
Hold on.
dude just a minute ago. You
Now,
told
hold
him
on,
that he
guys.
was
Hold on.
bullying
Now,
you, that he wasn't arguing right.
My
Then
God, like
the
this is
fascism
how
thing, you
this
turned
is
it
how you
around.
think you're gonna
No, you
win.
call everybody you
What
don't
I've
like
stated
fascists.
firmly. My position is
Uh-huh.
X. You've made your when we came to the fascism thing, we can go through line by line.
But let me ask you something. Why are you so angry? Why are you so angry that Iran seems to have lost their nuclear capacity? Because that's what you're arguing. You're arguing that was bad, that we shouldn't have done it.
I'm angry that the United States is potentially getting itself dragged into another forever war. That's
But we're
the
not.
closest of anger that I could see myself getting.
I don't believe that we are. It killed Soleimani. That didn't start a forever war.
Everything looks like we're getting pulled into a war in Iran.
Well, then you need to reevaluate what you're looking at.
But whether or not that's the case or not, setting that aside, getting just to the topic, we can go
just the whole
point.
victim blaming thing. Like, okay, Iran is getting ready, like they're preparing a nuke because they're going to nuke Israel.
Stop using buzzwords, victim blaming, gaslighting. Dude, come on.
That is victim blaming. No, wait a second. Why would you even say that? What's the point of calling Israel fascist? What is the point of that? Well, then they deserve. See, Iran needs to have a nuke because Israel's fascist. That's why you're bad.
That is not my argument at all. I'm stating Israel.
Okay, that's not your argument.
Is a fascist state. Us getting involved in a war between
what's the point in that?
Us getting involved in a war between
Israel, to discredit Israel
and Iran.
No, to basically say that Iran is at least somewhat justified. That's what the point that you're making is because Israel's fascist, right?
No.
Isn't that why would you bring up that Israel's fascist?
And America is the bad guys. Don't forget that one.
Yeah, yes, Americans are the bad guys. Well, we kind of got away from that one. With the weird history of the special forces.
Get involved with. We keep doing things we shouldn't do.
Yeah. Okay, but somehow or other, this all became about. Look at them. Listen to what happened. Look at what happened here. He literally made the whole conversation about Israel being fascist, not about whether or not Iran should have a bomb, which is what and then we were the bad guys.
To be fair, you did kind of like hone down on that one, which I'm not mad at. I'll be honest with you. I did want to get more into that conversation, but you did hone down on Guest Dude on that one.
Well,
and
I did because it was a silly assertion to make. I mean, because if you want to see what like a nominally fascist country would look like, there's a couple of good examples in the world now.
And we fundamentally disagree on that. That was the core of the debate.
Then stop talking about it if you fundamentally disagree on it. Like, you're just going in circles, and this isn't even about
You don't debate to try. You don't debate your opponent to try to win against your opponent. A person has a position that is solidified, and the other person has a position that's solidified, and they argue their points. They bring thesis and antithesis together, and then an audience.
Oh, and then they come up with the synthesis. Oh, this is the dialectic, isn't it?
No, I'm talking about just you have
the thesis and the antithesis. That's stop.
I'm using it as just pure raw.
No, I recognize this shit. Oh my God.
I have a thesis.
Okay, go ahead.
You have an antithesis. We're having a debate on it, and S.E.T has an audience that's made up of a bunch of different people that have different points of view, and they're watching. The point isn't to try to convince you.
And what you're trying to convince them of is that we should not be allied with Israel because they're fascist. And that's
assertion.
Yeah,
that's my flat, full stop assertion.
Okay,
we should not be getting involved in wars in the Middle East on behalf of Israel.
Okay. Well, they also chant death to America. Okay. And when you asserted that it was all
because we're allied
the whole reason why the Iranians, no, not necessarily, because you know what, actually we weren't messing. It had nothing to do with Israel when we were.
We've been allied to Israel.
We were ensuring that Mossadegh was taken out of the equation, right? Was removed from the Iranian government. Okay, because that is something that we did, and that is something that the Iranians hold against us, and so it's not all about Israel. We were shoring up the Shah, and not only that, we allowed the Shah to come into the United States to get cancer treatment. And when Iran, when the Ayatollah demanded that we hand him over, we refused. They wanted to try him and kill him.
We have beat.
Okay. Instead, we treated him for cancer.
With Iran.
So it's not all about Israel, then, is it?
So
No,
That's a disingenuous argument. You knew all that history, and yet you left it all out.
No, I'm saying in this situation, we should not be getting involved in another war in the Middle East on the behalf of Israel.
But they chant death to America as well, and you yourself said for them to come up with an ICBM is not a far reach. Okay, so if they do develop a nuclear weapon, Israel's not the only one that's threatened by this, and there are other ways to deliver nuclear weapons that might involve just sailing a ship into a harbor. Okay, so when they develop a nuclear weapon, it is a threat to the American people, and it's not just Israel. And your arguments are ignoring all of those facts, and I think that they're willfully ignoring them.
I asserted firmly.
Oh, you forgot all of those facts?
I understand those fears.
You're so well informed. You forgot all of those things? No, you forgot all of those things.
No, I didn't. You, again, are attacking me and trying to assert things and put things into place that aren't my arguments. But
you knew all those things, and you left them out of your argument as if they didn't matter, but they do. You literally said that they hate us because we support Israel. And you're saying that we shouldn't have done this because it's only in Israel's service.
I said multiple times because we were involved in the coup of Iran. I also brought up that we couped and put into place Saddam, who had beef with the Iranians, and we backed that whole situation that was going on with the Iranian-Iraq war.
Yeah, there's lots of examples of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Okay, that's whatever you want to. That's the whataboutism. That's you whataboutism. Against America.
It's not
okay?
whataboutism.
The fact of the matter is,
Iran has a lot of good reasons to be pissy with us.
So
does that make them? What does that mean? Does that mean we have to tolerate them getting a nuke?
Hold on. I got you. So at what point does Iran dictate our foreign policy? At what point do we let terrorists tell us who we can be allies with? At what point do we give that up? We have the biggest military in the fucking world, and you think we should be big dicked around by fucking Iran?
I'm saying, point blank, we should not be getting involved in wars in the Middle East on behalf of Israel because they're fascist. I don't understand how that is.
It's not. Iran obtaining a nuclear weapon is a threat.
We're fundamentally operating on a different definition of fascism. I took it all the way back to Mussolini.
It has nothing to do. This has nothing to do with fascism. You're trying to derail the conversation again. The conversation is about Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon and us taking action. And you're asserting that it's all on the behalf of Israel. And the fact of the matter is no, that's not it. The fact of the matter is that if Iran develops a nuclear weapon, there is every reason. Hold on, I'm not finished.
Don't shush me again. Enough with the shushing. I'm not your kid.
Stop interrupting me in the middle of a sentence. Then.
You consistently
interrupt me. Stop acting like a child. No. You're used to steamrolling people. I've listened to this whole show, and I've heard you steamroll. You're doing it again. Okay, you interrupted me in the middle of a thought. The point is that Iran acquiring a nuclear weapon is a direct threat to the United States.
You're making the same argument again and again, though. You're not making any new arguments.
Your whole argument
and I've already asserted
we should get rid of them.
fully. I've already asserted fully. I understand the fear of Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I just don't think it's a
then our action
for us
was not solely our action was not solely in support of Israel, then, was it?
Our justification for this action right now was because of the consistent back and forth between Iran and Israel. We got involved on the side of Israel in a conflict.
Because this was the best opportunity we had, because they were not going to give up the capacity through negotiations. The negotiations were not going anywhere. Okay. And he became convinced that they're not going to stop trying. They're not, and so therefore, the capacity
while they're getting hit by jets.
He gave them 60 days.
Supplied to.
He gave them 60 days, and he became convinced that they were not negotiating in good faith, and that they had every intention of actually developing a weapon. And that's his job, okay. and the action he took was on behalf of the American people, not just Israel. And so that argument needs to be thrown out. It's disingenuous.
No, it's not.
I just don't understand
Yes, it
why
is.
you're arguing so hard for a country that wants to see you fucking dead.
I'm not arguing for them. I'm
You
arguing
are
There's
for
an
America
emotional-
not getting
there's an
There's only
emotional
involved.
two sides
basis.
to this. There's only
He
two
hates
sides to
Israel. He wants to make it about Israel. He's been trying for like a mother. He keeps trying to drag it back to it. No, it's about Iran, and it's about our national interests, and it's about that it wasn't all just for Israel. This was the best window to put to go ahead and hit
No.
that
You
facility
keep
and say we're
trying to
done.
go to that well. There's no water in that well, dude. It has nothing to do with an emotional response or a hatred for Israel. And I'm finding
I don't care.
like
I
that
don't
isn't
care.
the's no water there at
I
that well.
don't
You
care,
keep trying
but
to go back
it's
to
a
that point.
no. It's a disingenuous argument to say that it was all for Israel. That we're getting involved because
I've
it's all
used
for
other
Israel.
arguments
It's not.
like this is WMD 2.0.
You just stated
Us
your
trying to
argument.
drag in.
You just
No,
stated your argument just a minute
I've
ago.
used a
They've got
bunch of different arguments in this entire conversation.
you said my
You're
argument
narrowing down on trying to lambast me
like a
as
minute ago.
only
Like a
one
minute
argument.
ago, you said my argument is that we should not be doing this because of and earlier it was the
That's a
fascist state
core
of Israel. But
thesis.
regardless, yeah,
That's a
and it's
core
not, and it's
aspect of
flawed
my
because
thesis.
that's what we're saying.
is that it's not all for Israel, and it's demonstrably not all for Israel. And you've admitted that yes, there's a legitimate
The
fear. If
back
they
and
get a
forth
weapon, they could deploy it against us.
the hatred that Iran has stems from our alliance from Israel. The planes that
They've got lots of other reasons to hate us too. You
the
agreed with
planes
that
that have been
earlier as well.
the planes and bombs that have been hitting Iran from Israel. Who supplied Israel with those weapons?
We did.
Who supplied Who supplied Iran with the weapon with the aircraft that we keep watching get destroyed by Israel's planes on the tarmac? Who built those planes?
Pre-coup?
They're still flying F-14s, aren't they? So what's
But
come
the
on,
point
man.
I'm making is if you're consistently getting blown up by made in USA weapons that are flown and dropped by made in USA jets, you're gonna start going. They keep supplying them, and they're going to keep supplying them. We're pissed off at them for a myriad of reasons, and they're effectively in the war, but they're not. So, death to America, I guess. They had geopolitically, diplomatically, they have argumentation.
They were saying death to America in 1979. Okay, and that was
how many
before
weapons
Israel was
were
bombing any of their shit. Okay, as a matter of fact, they had nothing to do with
what happened
Israel
around that time? We couped their country.
We didn't coup their country. They couped their country.
It was a color revolution. Don't play that. It was a color revolution. We participated in cooing Israel.
What the fuck? You're talking about Mossadegh back in the 50s, in the late 40s? Dude, no. When I'm talking about 1979, bro, when the Ayatollah took over, that wasn't us cooing anybody. That was the Ayatollah cooing. Okay? I mean, come on.
As a reaction,
you remember that?
As a reaction to the coup that we staged in Iran.
What a lot of people participate. A lot of countries participated in that as well. So whatever. But no, the Ayatollah's beef was with the regime, the Iranian regime. And yes, they were angry with us for supporting that regime. They weren't angry with us over Israel at that point. They had nothing to do. They weren't even thinking about that.
We established effectively a dictatorship in Iran that overthrew the pre-existing Islamic government that had been there previously.
All right. So then that didn't have anything to do with Israel, did it? But they were yelling death to America, right? And this was 1979, 1980. Like they held our people for 444 days. You remember that, right? So, yeah,
yes,
they had lots of reasons. They were yelling death to America, and that didn't have shit to do with Israel. Okay? So, no, they don't just hate us over Israel.
I'm aware,
and yes, they
but
do.
I'm stating
great. So if they develop a nuclear weapon, it is a direct threat to us. So them preventing them from acquiring a nuclear weapon is in our direct interest.
Counter argument to that, they have just as much access.
Hold on. Whether or not Israel exists or not, Iran will still hate us.
Yeah, because we're allied.
Because we weren't allies before. Stop. We weren't allies before, and they still fucking hated us then. We weren't acting on behalf of Israel before. They still fucking hated us then. So if
When have
Israel
we not
never,
acted on
if
behalf of Israel? Israel was
if
founded
Israel never
by the
fucking
United States,
existed, they would
effectively.
still hate us because
No, it
the
wasn't.
Muslim way of life,
The
Bullshit.
current state of Israel, as it's shaped, was founded and sustained by the United States.
Well, actually, the
That's
United
true.
States.
That's
Sorry.
true. Hold on.
Actually, most of the weaponry that they used in the early wars were provided by France.
Hold on,
And
guys.
actually, they flew old German fighters.
I'm aware.
They flew
I'm
BF
saying this is
109.
after the
Yeah, I
6
hear
Day
you. I'm
War.
sorry. Go ahead.
Became
It's your channel, bro.
No, I'm not set.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I was.
I'm Luke.
Oh, okay. Hey, Luke. What's going on,
Hey,
man?
Fuck you, Luke.
So yeah, I know, right? I gotta say bravo. I gotta say bravo. This is better than Jerry Springer ever was. This is better than The View. It's better than CNN trying to team up against what's that guy? Scott Jennings. Yeah, this is amazing. Bravo. I gotta say that. And the dates and names of things that you guys are just off your dome throwing out, like I can tell
Oh yeah.
both you guys are very, very up to date on each,
up to date and back to date.
Yeah, and
Man.
on each side. And I gotta say, like
Like,
yes,
I ain't gonna lie, the history knowledge went over my head for a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa,
I'm telling you,
whoa. How y'all know so much detail?
And guest dude, I really applaud you for having the, this is it's kind of a pro America, pro Trump channel. S.E.T's trying to be fair, but it kind of is what it is. And I applaud you for, being willing to, make all those points that we just don't hear about, and Skip, right? Yeah, Skip, like, well done, like both you guys being able to go back and forth, but talking over each other is one thing, but I gotta interject something. The deep state plays a part in all this. The Jeffrey Epstein having dirt on our leaders plays a part in all this. America making Israel, validating it as a country again, or a state, plays a part in this. You guys both have really good points, but my question to both of you is, America goes back and forth between, pro America versus pro world parties, back and forth. And there was a long time period where the Bush family, the Bush dynasty, the Clinton, Barack Obama, they were all on the same team. The Bush dynasty were rhinos. They weren't a typical Republican. The New World Order, I heard first from George Bush Sr. saying, in one of his speeches. And my question is, with Israel having deep state influences, okay, the Israeli people don't, but the government does. Just like America has deep state influences, but the people don't, but the country does.
Part of the club.
Huh?
I said we don't get to be a part of the club.
We don't.
I'm agreeing with you. Like,
yeah.
People don't have it.
Us average people don't. Yeah. There's a club and you're not in it. George Carlin, I think. And I don't know, is there a deep state influencing the leader of Iran and some of those other countries? Is this really a war of ideologies on the surface, but underneath it all, a war for war's sake, propped up by the deep state. That's my question.
So okay, well, the question is,
I'd
you
like
guys
to
believe this? Go ahead.
interject if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
And that's thanks for the feedback. I appreciate what you said earlier. And I think that the deep state. I think that there are a number of nations that suffer from having a deep state, and I think
Unelected bureaucrats, right?
yeah,
That's
well,
what we're
bureaucrats that feel that part of their job is to achieve ideological goals rather than just do their fucking job, right? Like in the army, if you're given a lawful order, you have to do it, and you have to do it the best way you can. Okay, and even if you think it's the wrong thing, you have to do it. Okay, and you have to do the best. You have to do the best that you can. But
well, hold on. Before you go on to another one, I've heard stories of sergeants or group leaders telling their group, if I ever tell you to do an unconstitutional order, you have to take me out.
That's why he said lawful. That's the
Oh,
difference.
yeah, lawful. Lawful. Yeah.
You actually have a duty to not follow lawful orders.
Right.
Unlawful orders. You have a duty to not follow unlawful orders. Right. Yeah, but you better be damn sure, because you are going to get court-martialed, and you're going to have to, you're going to have to be able to defend yourself. And hey, you know what? There are times when I suppose that happens. I don't think I've ever been given an unlawful order. And
we know what happened in Vietnam, right?
Yep, we do. Yep.
There were like go kill this whole village. Different war crime type stuff.
Yeah, we got training in that. I mean, we got classes on that when I was in basic training. We had classes on that, on My Lai, and on the people that participated. And the fact of the matter is like most of those guys did not go to prison. The lieutenant did, but most of those guys didn't.
And what about the guy
weird.
that said that he would let China know if we ever started thinking about attacking them? A Millie?
Oh, Millie. That's actually a court-martial. It could be treason. And we'll see what happens with that. Well, it depends on what they charge him with. They could minimize it and charge him with a lower level crime, or they could go whole hog and charge him with treason. But there's a higher standard for that too.
I don't know. Do the tribunals, right? They're not courts; they're called tribunals, right?
They could call him back to active duty and court-martial him. Yes.
Yep.
Do they have political bents? The people operating these tribunals, are they?
That's the thing. Is that
are they Supreme Court?
Hopefully not. No, they're not. They're military officers.
Your command, yeah.
They're general. They'll be general officers. He can't be tried by anybody below his own rank.
Yeah.
They even if they had to call back other 4-stars to be on the,
So is it possible the deep state has influenced the high brass operating in these tribunals?
You know what? That's a great question. I mean, listen. The point that I was interjecting to make before I lose it, because it's related, but it's kind of not. Is that you said something that brought this to mind when you interjected, and it was like, wow, okay, I needed to hear that right now, because you said that you're getting to hear shit that we don't normally get to hear,
right?
And arguments that you don't normally get to hear made.
Yeah,
right?
Details we have no context for,
Right. Yeah. And not only that, but you get to hear both sides. Okay. So, I mean, regardless of what I think of his opinion, okay, he got to put it out there, and people got to listen to it and evaluate it and compare it. Okay. And we should always question
Right.
whether we're doing the right thing or not. We
And
should
to
look
be
at our
fair,
motives.
To be fair, Skip, I don't want to
Yeah.
cut you off, but my wife will not listen to 5 minutes of anything about this. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have best friends that I can talk to about this and stuff like that. If I have anybody, it's like you guys or people on the internet. So I think you guys might be in a similar boat, unless you guys have amazing wives or something. I don't know. But
no, I have friends that I mean, a lot of people that I know discuss
sometimes
topics like this.
working it out in speech happens differently than working it out in your mind to yourself or reading someone else's biased view on it. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Well, that we're not having these conversations in front of hundreds of people.
Right. It's a rare thing.
Also, I just want to say,
well, what I'm saying is we should like, and I don't mean like, yes, personally, yes, I think it's important, but as a nation, I think it's important that when we, like, particularly when we do something violent, right, in all of our names, it's appropriate to ask questions. Like, I might sound like, like I want to shut this dude down. No, I'll counter him, and I'll make observations. Whatever, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Okay.
Yeah, your objections are different than his objections.
But I think we should, as a nation, look and say, hey, are we doing the right thing? It's good to question. It's good to question. Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes it's not. I mean, we can look in retrospect and see some things that we wish had not been done in our name, right? Like maybe if we hadn't fucked around with Mohammed Mossadegh, if we hadn't like tipped the scales, because we weren't the only ones involved in that by a far sight. Okay, and the Russians were fucking around there. Everybody was messing around.
No,
okay,
the French were still playing their game, trying to establish
French
their freaking second empire.
They were still pissed off at the French for the longest time. I think the only reason that they're not like death to France.
Get away with so much of their bullshit. Vietnam, Syria.
Well, they let the Ayatollah live there for a while.
So I don't even know the slightest about.
Yeah,
like,
no,
how is
like
France
the French
manipulated?
Okay, after World War II, the French, pretty much the entirety of Europe was like, yeah, this whole empire thing, it's a bad idea. Let's dismantle them and break them down a little bit. Let's start releasing our colonies. And France was like, it's our fucking time to rise. And they went out and tried to reestablish. France still has a fucking empire to this day.
Huh? They were the opportunists.
France has an empire to this day.
Well, see, they didn't lose as many of their young generation because they all fucking chew-hoyed, right? I mean, you don't die with your hands in the air. I mean, when you're flying the white flag,
the big issue was France could have ended World War II in the first week, but they pushed into Germany about 30 miles deeper than they planned to and met no resistance, and were like, I guess we're not actually at war, and they went back behind